rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Alvarez?
Here.
Councilwoman Eckhart?
Here.
Councilwoman Hudak?
Here, nunc pro tunc.
Councilman Ward?
Here.
Supervisor Hay?
Here. Notations to the exits in the front and rear, electronic devices, please put them on vibrate. First item on the work session this evening, I make a motion to do that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First, a discussion on Putnam County Taxi and Limousine Commission. I contacted our representatives at the county and asked them if they would like to come here to discuss it with us this evening. Unfortunately, their schedules didn't match up to ours. I think I won't say touch on it briefly. I do have some things to say, but I'll cut it back because what I'll do is I'm going to send most of my comments to them directly. But I want to share some of my thoughts going back to 2001. When it was last
Ancient
done on
history.
the legislature. And I proudly say I voted no then, I would vote no now, but we'll go from there. So, taxi and limousine. Anyone want to start making a comment? Or you want me to talk? How do you want to do?
You can go first. You probably have the most to say, and then I can follow up if you missed anything I wanted to say. How's that sound?
Okay, I'll be as brief as I can, and like I said, I will share my thoughts with the board. There's quite a bit of questions that I have with the county, and even if the representatives were here, I'm not sure if they could answer them. The question is, what is the goal of the legislature creating a taxi and limousine commission? Is it to make money? Has there been a signal from Westchester County that they reciprocate if we created one? And in order to have reciprocal licensing with Westchester County, we'd have to have identical laws, and it's quite expensive. Now, back in 1957, Putnam County was the first county outside Westchester, outside New York City, that had a plumbing law. To this day, we don't have a reciprocal licensing law for the mechanical trades. Electric we do, not plumbing. There's probably numerous plumbers and mechanical trades that would love to see a reciprocal licensing. So I think what they should do is take the efforts that they're trying to put into the taxi and limousine, put in a reciprocal licensing with Westchester County, and we'd have a lot more happy people in Putnam County than we have currently. The things that have to be asked, and I have not heard a word about, how many taxi and limousine companies operate in the town of Southeast and the village of Brewster, and how many are in the county? To this day, 17 years later, I've never seen the number. How many taxi and limousine vehicles operate in the town of Southeast, including the village of Brewster? How many in the county? How many taxi and limousine drivers operate in the town of Southeast, including the village of Brewster? And how many in the county? I have never seen an answer to any of these questions. And the most important, how many taxi and limousines that are registered in Westchester County are from Putnam? Now, I went online quickly, I found 7. I think I found about 19 that are here in Putnam County. And 1 is not registered with having a medical exemption, so to speak. The governor and the county have been working on shared services. We've been working on now for probably 6 months. It's a big deal. So my question is, why, if we're trying to consolidate services, why would we now want to create another bureaucracy in Putnam County that we're already currently sharing with Westchester County? To me, that does not make sense. Let's see. Another thing I wanted to bring up is the MTA tax. We all pay the MTA tax. Now, if you have a limousine or taxi and you don't go into Westchester County, why would you want to be a part of the Westchester County tax limousine? I think for one car, it costs, I wouldn't say $1,000, but you have to have a base station. Each car has to be licensed. You don't have to register all your vehicles. So why would they want to create something where a taxi and a limousine would be required to be registered when they don't go into Westchester County? So it could be a savings. So what's the cost to create a taxi limousine commission? What department will oversee the commission? Who does the fingerprinting? Who does the background checks? And what about enforcement? That's the most important thing with any law that's created, and it was the biggest problem always with Putnam County. We had laws, but where's the enforcement? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all my comments in writing to them and just say, here's my concerns. If we hear a couple more, I can add it to the concerns of the board, and we'll forward it. And just on behalf of the Village of Brewster, I did speak to Mayor Schoening about this. The Village of Brewster is the only municipality. There's, let's see, 6 towns, 3 villages, 9 municipalities. The Village of Brewster is the only one that has any kind of licensing. They make approximately $30,000 to $35,000 a year. They do an excellent job patrolling and enforcing the law. I think it'd be much more difficult for Putnam County. And I just can't imagine being down to Brewster train station, Village of Brewster, and have a taxi come in from Connecticut. I'm not sure how interstate transportation works, and to be ticketed, I just don't think it's something that would work well here in Putnam. So that's my belief on it. Cool.
Edwin, do you? No, I just didn't. You pretty much said it all. I would just like to say that I spoke to the village clerk today, and they want to retain control, which I understand completely, because I think they, as Tony said, they do a good job. It's a small enough area where they really can stay on it, on top of everything. In Southeast, we would certainly have difficulty, or the county, I just don't think it's very enforceable. It's more regulation. I think in the long run, it could cost taxpayers more money. And I do like to be supportive of the village when we're in agreement. So if this does come up, I will not be voting in favor of it.
John?
Yeah, I wish that the county would have given us some reasons why they think it's necessary. I went to village meetings as well and found Mayor Schoening wanting to keep the control because his police force has a relationship with the cab or the taxis that are there now, and they know who is driving most of the cars, and for security reasons and village reasons, I think we should leave it in their control. I think if the Putnam County had a taxi and limousine commission, they would, I don't think they'd be able to provide the same services that the village is getting from their commission. So anyway, that's what I think.
Liz?
I think the difficulty is in not hearing, once again, what Putnam County's reasons are for and against having such a taxi and limousine commission. Like I had said a couple of meetings ago regarding this matter, I wanted to revisit it. I know fully well the Village of Brewster's concerns regarding the fact that they don't want to abdicate their control of the taxis in the village to anyone else, and I respect that decision. I understand what Tony and Lynn, John have said, respect it again. I think really what I would like to hear is any other reasons. It's difficult for me to make a determination unless I hear all sides. There isn't anything, I believe, anything formally before us regarding this matter. I would still love to hear something from the other side, which I believe is going to have to be the case if indeed there is anything before us substantively, which we would have to make a determination. But I agree that Brewster has a solid interest in maintaining their symbiotic relationship, with quotes, with the taxis in their area. And what I would like to hear is the other side. If something comes before us, then I think it'd be a heck of a lot easier for me to say one way or the other. But at this point in time, I'm awaiting what they're saying. And I'd love to see what they say. Or I should say, I'd love to hear what they say.
Okay, so with the board's permission, what I will do is I'll put together my concerns, Lynn's, circulated amongst ourselves, that we're interested in hearing more from them about the rationale behind it. And if they're interested in sharing whatever information they may or may not have, and if and when they ever have it, that they share it with us. And until then, we have no opinion.
Tony, can I just say that I do attend most of the county committee meetings?
Oh, we heard.
I'm sure. I'm always welcome. Anyhow, I think one of the, and I agree with Liz, I would welcome to hear, I've heard the other side, and I wasn't impressed, but I think it is really important to always hear both sides. So I would welcome our representatives, or anyone from the county, as a matter of fact, to come and discuss it. I know there were problems with pickups and drop-offs at Westchester County and
Reciprocity.
Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
I know there were problems with that, so I certainly would welcome them here, but at this point, I didn't hear anything at that level that convinced me it was.
I mean, maybe we can throw out a couple of dates to make certain that we have this. But once again, yeah, I'd like to have something substantive before. I just, right now it's just speculation.
And we only really, I invited all three members, the two representatives from town of Southeast and the chairman of the particular committee. As long as one of them can attend and make the pitch accordingly, I'll just offer it to them. And when we hear back from them, we'll make it a matter of discussion. In the meantime, we'll send out the quick
Agreed.
response. Okay? Okay, number 2, Maybrook Bike Trail connection to Wells Park. The village leases the property from the town. They have a 25-year lease. I believe, I don't know if they approached the county or vice versa, but what they'd like to do is the bike trail, Maybrook, runs right behind Wells Park. And what they'd like to do is to put in like an extension of the bikeway, a wide, it's a blacktop path will come in. This way, people that are going up and down the bike trail and their bikes can stop there for a pit stop. I'm not sure exactly if they're gonna have the bathrooms to be used or whatever, but the village feels it's a good idea. I don't have a problem with it. So if we all kind of agree this evening, we can ask that we'll put together some kind of a formal agreement that we're willing to do that. It's about $200,000. I believe they're going to be done with a grant that they're going to be applying for. If the grant doesn't go through, I don't think it will happen. So at this point in time, the village has requested it. I've looked at it. I have no problem with it. I think it will help somewhat on the bike trail for people to have a rest area to pull over if they're necessary. And the village is maintaining it.
That's what I was going to ask. Who maintains it? That's
Well,
all.
the village, they have a lease with us. They'd be responsible for the maintenance of it.
Okay.
But, and I have no problem either, as long as it doesn't cost us anything, which it shouldn't. But we should bear in mind that we will have to maintain it if our lease with the village isn't renewed, even though that's at least 20 years out. But just so we know when we vote on it, if it helps the village and Wells Park, I think it's a great idea.
Lynn, if you're here at that point in time, God bless you.
She may be.
Who wrote the,
I'm gonna make sure.
who wrote this thing that's in our packet
The
about?
schematic.
I got this all from the village of Worcester.
So the village of Brewster, and so the village is looking for us to,
They're looking, again, if we agree this evening, we'll ask Will to prepare whatever necessary documentation for that to happen, and we can have it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I think it's a great idea. I like the bike path. My one concern is if they build this entryway from Wells Park, the village closes Wells Park, I think, 4 or 5 months a year. So, and I think they close it at Oak Street. So if they're going to close it, then, and people are not going to have access to the bikeway during those months, I think it's self-defeating. I would like the village to agree to keep access open to people that want to use the bike trail.
Well,
Oh, yeah. I think they would. I think they'd have to gate off the park, but the bike
They could
trail
still
will
get it.
continue. It would just be like a driveway, only a.
And even though the bike
As far as I
path
know,
is,
that's
even
why.
though the bike path is open year-round for people to use as they so choose, because of the winter, and most people that ride bikes and walk don't use it. So usually from maybe December 1st until maybe end of March, people wouldn't use it anyway. So there might only be about a month's period where that would come into play.
I use it,
Yeah.
I use it whenever there's
No
clear
snow.
pavement. And people, I think, use it for cross-country skiing. I mean, this is going to be an access way to the whole rail trail system. And I think if the village wants this to happen there, I think that they should be willing to allow access to this path year-round. That's just my opinion.
No, I think it's a good point, and I think Lynn just spoke to it. My belief in looking at this was that it would be year-round, because there was no caveats as far as the use. So, but that would be a good point that Will can look into and ensure the fact that this is something that would be year-round. And if it's not year-round, what would be the months or the periods of time that it wouldn't be available? But I thought that it would be year-round, just because it was part of the path.
I just know how they wouldn't allow events to happen in mid to early spring because the park was closed. So I just, anyway, thanks.
Well, I was just checking.
Those are my
I think
thoughts.
that's great. Good point, John.
Okay, so, Edwin?
No, I'm in favor of it, so.
Okay, so, Will, I guess it's the opinion of the board, if you can maybe work with the village and prepare some kind of a document for
I
this
think
to
we really have to be
happen?
working with the county.
County?
Well,
Okay, we have, to.
the
okay, well,
county's the one that's going to fund it, is that correct?
yeah. The village has come to us because we're the owner of the property, so they're gonna facilitate it. So we, as the owner of the property, are gonna authorize, and I guess, well, between us and the county then, right?
Well, I think we want to control,
Okay,
you know, how it's built and whatnot. I think that's something that you don't want to relinquish.
okay, you got the green light to move forward. Put it on your list of things to do.
Gentlemen, rev your engines.
But- Okay. Item number 3, Fortune Ridge dedication of roads.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Richard O'Rourke, Keenan Bean, attorney for Fortune Homes. Brian Hildenbrand, who is a professional engineer with Kellard Sessions that have been involved in this project since 1988. So, what we have for discussion purposes with the town board is to have dedication of a portion of the road on which presently there are 17 houses located. Those houses, several of them have children. A couple of the couples are older couples that downsize from larger homes in northern Westchester, play golf at Salem Golf Club. Kids are gone, and they just wanted to downsize and live in a very, very nice house. Nevertheless, there have been folks that really would like to have the road dedicated simply because, and one of the reasons, principal reason, is that school buses can come up to pick up the kids. If you drive down there, school bus time, you'll see the cars parked down at the bottom of the hill, Dean's Corners Road, with mothers and fathers with the children. They don't want them walking all the way down the street, which is a considerable length. In any event, I think the important thing to consider here is that with regard to the road, the binder course has been placed. The stormwater management and catch bases are all done. They have been appropriately graded. The only thing that remains is the top course for the pavement to be placed on the road. The town currently has $4.8 million in surety for completion of site work, and additional $1.9 million for site road completion.
Site road?
Site for, I'm sorry, for road completion.
Well, could you repeat, was it
1.9?
1.9? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Was it 1.9?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It is exactly, let's see, $1,910,807.50.
And that is for,
Road com-
That is specifically for site road completion.
okay, and what was the one prior to that?
That other total is $4.8 million.
For,
And that's for other work that may not necessarily be done with regard to the subdivision.
Okay.
If you've been down there, the entire road network is done.
yes,
Binder course, catch basins. Your regulations call for not releasing any more than, we must maintain 50% of the entire estimated cost of completion. we have, so that we can't get it reduced anymore in accordance with your regulations, all right? We probably have about $2 million worth of work left, max. I don't know.
Yes.
Even less. But nevertheless, you're holding that money because that's what your regulations require. And so you have it. The point we're making here is that even if there was a calamity, a catastrophe with this road, you have so much security that we'd be obligated to maintain that. And of course, if there was a problem with the road, we repair it.
Now,
That's it.
The section, I see the green section.
Yes.
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yeah, you want?
Okay, so
You want
just
to-
the green
yep.
section
Can
is
we
the
turn it?
only part of the road that we're discussing now with this requirement? And what about,
the green section.
and what about the ones that are not identified? What happens with them?
The binder course is in.
Sorry, can you take the mic, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. The binder course is in, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that all the catch basins, all the stormwater infrastructure, it is done over here, okay? In addition, as you may recall, on the other side of the road where the barn is being built, the equestrian center, I don't know, is it another 35 homes?
Yes.
Yeah, 35 homes. And that road is totally completed as well. Binder course, catch basins, all that infrastructure is there as well. What we're asking for is the dedication of this road, and our point is that is something that is accommodating to the homeowners, and at the same time, the town has more than sufficient security in place if something further needs to be done with the road.
Now,
Something what? I apologize.
Something further done with the road.
Okay.
There's whatever.
now you got the other two legs up on top, and you've got
Yes.
the other one to this end over here.
Yes.
You're not asking for that now?
No.
Do you think you may ask for that in the future? Or do you think?
Well, if we could sell the houses, you know, we would, at a point where there are people and school children in there, we would ask for it to be dedicated. But again,
I think that-
they're not banging down doors.
Okay, the biggest concern, I believe, will be the fact, is there enough money, the amount of traffic there's going to be? So is there, again, we have a town engineer, superintendent of highways, which will basically work with you and make a recommendation to the town board about what happens. I don't have a problem, as long as there's enough money that we're guaranteed that, you know, in the future. But I think the concern I've heard the most is that there's going to be a lot of future heavy equipment on the portion we're accepting, because there's tractor trailers and whatever come in, the main portion of it, it will get worn down, torn up. So that is the biggest concern, I believe.
And our point is that, and we understand that, and that's why we're not saying, you know, let's dedicate it all and give us our money back. We're not suggesting that. We're saying that you have enough security, more than sufficient security, to cover that possibility.
And that's over $2 million.
Yes.
1
No, 1.9 for the
Okay,
roads.
well,
and the other,
Well, the total you have is $6.7 million, and our point is that there's not anywhere near $6.7 million worth of work that remains. It's probably closer to $2 million.
and that's 6.5 houses.
It's a lot of money.
I know.
And the other thing you have to remember, the recreation fees were paid for all this 10 years ago for these lots. So you did very well with this.
Great, we love it.
So out of that 1.9 million, that has to also be used to bring the rest of the roadway into conformity, as well as...
No, we have to do that. If we don't do it, you have the security in place
Okay.
to make sure that it gets done.
of how much?
You have $6.7 million.
And that's for all of the roads.
That's for all of the roads.
Okay.
Will, can you possibly work with both the town engineer and the town highway superintendent to see if this can be done and worked out, some kind of a verbal, not a verbal, but a written agreement that the board can look at to approve or disapprove?
Oh, sure. I mean, I could work with the town engineer and the town highway superintendent I haven't had any input from either one of those offices since, Rick has been, Mr. O'Rourke has been trying to communicate with the town. And I believe that the engineer has been out there.
Yes, in fact, I spoke with the engineer today.
Well, I think what you're really trying to do is laudable, but I don't know that is this in, which school district is this in?
Brewster School District.
Okay, it's in the Brewster Central School District. They go into private roads.
All I can tell you, my understanding is that efforts have been made by representatives of the company for that, and they have not been receptive.
And is that because they don't feel assured that it's going to be maintained, so their buses can?
I believe that that's what it. I don't know.
So what you're really
well.
trying to do is kick the maintenance responsibility for those roads to the town.
Yeah, and also provide for the opportunity for the school buses to go up there.
But like I said, the school buses go into, I use Salmon's Daily Brook as one example. Those are private roads. Those are maintained privately. School buses go in there.
Right. Those roads were, when that subdivision was approved, it was with the understanding that those roads would never be dedicated.
That's correct.
Right.
But school buses go in there.
There would be no alternative. I guess the issue I have here, the issue
Initially, they
here.
picked up at the end of Salmon's Hollow Road. Initially, that's where all the children were deposited. Now
I'm sorry?
I said initially,
Right.
the school district would pick up the kids at the end of Salmon's Hollow.
Correct, right.
Now they go in and they pick up along the loop. I don't know why they wouldn't do it here.
I mean, I lived in Salmons, so just to throw this out to you, I never knew why they ever did it anyway. But as one of the homeowners there, I don't think that I ever felt 100% comfortable that one day I'd wake up and find out that the school buses wouldn't go in there, nor would the post office deliver mail. So I think really at this point in time, what Mr. O'Rourke is saying is, I don't really want homeowners, of which there are 4 or 6 or whatever you said, and
17.
7, whatever it is,
17.
to feel uncomfortable. And bear in mind that Salmons was a subdivision that would absolutely never, ever have those roads dedicated. Never, because of different historical reasons. The bottom line is what I'm hearing here is that these roads will be dedicated one day, and there's 6 point whatever millions of dollars ready to go, that even though there may be some initial or what's happening with selling the other houses, that this section of town where people are indeed paying taxes to the town, are indeed paying taxes to the school system, what they're saying is, then what do we get when we have our developer who has $6 million sitting there, when we are now in a position where we want the buses to come in, we want to be assured the buses come in, and we want to see sort of a bang for our buck in terms of snow plowing, et cetera, because otherwise they, I would imagine, will have to hire independent or private snow plows and potentially not have these buses go in. And as long as those roads are built to the specs that the town requires, Salmons never was. Salmons never was and never will be, ever. And they still do it, God bless. But the bottom line is, these roads, apparently, according to the engineer standing behind Mr. O'Rourke, are built to specs, and they are, a top coat, et cetera, away from being completed.
That is
So
correct.
under those circumstances, people who are sitting there paying taxes, I think they have the right to say, hey, I want to be assured that I have the buses come in. I want to be assured that the snow plows are going to be paid for by the town, which I pay the taxes. I think that's really where it is, and as long as you have $6 point whatever million, I don't see a real problem with it. And plus, I'm hearing, once again, that the town, those roads are built to town specs.
If I may just,
Except they're
if I could just.
I
They're
would
not
beg
complete.
to, I would beg to
But you
differ
have
on
6
some of
point
the
whatever million dollars.
Well,
And my
here's-
roads weren't complete
If I may
either.
just point one, I think this is very important. Salmon's Daily Brook, when those plats were filed, and when that homeowners association was approved by the New York State Attorney General, it was with the explicit understanding these are private roads not to be dedicated.
Period.
This is different. This is a subdivision where 15 years ago, the deeds and everything else were conveyed to the town attorney as required insofar as roads that were ultimately to be dedicated. Obviously, an as-built survey has to be completed, but I think the point of it is, as you've said, when people bought this, it was with the understanding the road would be dedicated. That's what it is.
But
Okay,
the
so
dif-
there's a big difference.
I think there's is a difference, but I still think, I mean, I would hope that when the developer or whomever real estate agent is selling these, that they don't tell people that, it is a town road, because it isn't a
They're not
dedicated-
telling them that.
Right, okay. So these people weren't under the illusion when they bought their houses that it was already a dedicated town road?
To my understanding, no.
Okay, so that's point one. How many additional homes need to be constructed up in this section?
I'm not, what is it, about 50?
52?
And that's the whole,
Okay.
what I'm looking at?
On this side.
On that
this
side, 35 on the other,
That's what I'm saying on
correct?
that.
Right.
Okay. Will that road, if this board votes to dedicate it, it will have the top course put on?
If the board wants the top course put on, it'll be put on.
Okay, because my concern, I have a big concern that if the top course is put on, that with all the heavy equipment, as Tony mentioned, that's going to wear it down pretty fast, and then we've bought the pig in a poke, and we, the taxpayers of Southeast, have to redo this road because there are 53 other houses up there.
But they
So-
have $6 million.
That's the point. You got $6 million.
Right.
We can't get the money back.
And these are people that they want to make money, and then on top of it, they want to sell houses. And the only way you're going to sell those houses is to say, hey, look, this is dedicated roads, and they will be. They're not now, but they'll be dedicated. And I have $6 million to do the roads. I think we have to trust our town engineers to say that of the $6 million, if some calamity occurs and there's a rip-up of whatever, and the only reason there'd be a rip-up is because of the heavy equipment to go elsewhere and build other houses, that we're going to be able to get that money.
But we have the further maintenance too. We have to maintain the catch basins. Is that just catch basins along that road that the town, although it all filters down anyhow, that the town will have to maintain if it's dedicated?
I think your intention is just to dedicate the area that's green.
Right, but
correct.
will we, so the town will maintain then, if that road is dedicated, the town will maintain those catch basins, is that
Only those
correct?
catch basins.
In green.
On this section, yes.
In that section?
Right.
Okay. And I assume, though, the catch basins up top do filter down?
There are, I think, a total of 18 stormwater basins.
Okay, but you will be, the applicant will be in charge of caring for those other catch basins, is that correct?
I believe that is part of the homeowners association responsibilities.
Okay. And will you have to get DEP, DEC, and DOT approval at all, or not for this?
If there's anyone that knows about it, you do.
That's not fair.
Yes.
Why is it unfair? I'm wondering, I thought Ms. Eckert would have recused herself. She sued the
Well,
town.
it's only discussion.
I didn't,
okay.
no,
It's
I
only
did not
discussion.
sue the town. I
Weren't you a
beg your pardon.
director of the concerned residents of Southeast that
Not when the suit was instituted, no.
when I look back at the newsletters, you were a director back in 2003 and 2004, 2005, were you not?
I would have to look and see.
I looked.
Okay, if worse comes to worse, she can recuse.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
will recuse
She can
myself
recuse
at that
herself, but
point
she
if that's
doesn't
what
get
you want,
recused
but
from the
I,
conversation.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
She can recuse herself at the time if she so chooses, but she doesn't need to recuse herself from the questions.
Oh, from the
bottom-
discussion.
I'm not here for an argument. What I want to point out, and I think this is very, very important, you have a developer who not only preserved but restored a castle that could have been torn down, spent millions of dollars, rebuilt stone walls, preserved property to this subdivision, notwithstanding the lawsuit and everything else, is considered a model in terms of management from an environmental perspective. And now we have people that have spent $1 million for homes in our community, and there's an infrastructure of over $50 to $75 million have been spent, and we're quibbling about this for dedication.
I don't think we're quibbling, we're just trying to get answers.
I have questions because
Wait,
I represent other people in the town of Southeast.
Well,
Yeah, but
obviously,
I mean, I think really what the problem is, I think you can say it's quibbling because Right now, I think when you winnow it down, you're just asking that these roads be dedicated with a $6 million backup, which was $6 million was provided for an entire area, and this is for that one little piece. And what we want to do, or at least I want to do, is to attract a lot more people who are willing to buy $1 million homes and pay lots of taxes. Lori Bell is sitting in the back there. I'd love to know how much in taxes can we gain? Yes, there'll be a couple of kids or more in school, but how much in taxes will the town of Southeast be able to have if indeed this happens over just having that road dedicated when they're paying all these taxes? And they're going to say, why do I have to, in addition, pay for John Doe to plow the roads and then have to worry that my kid or my grandchild's going to be at the end of this little cul-de-sac here? I think it's kind of quibbling. That's what I think.
And just for clarification, so everyone in the public is aware, every house that's not in that green loop, they all currently pay town tax, county tax, and school tax. Do they not, while it's being developed? Well, every lot in Southeast, whether there's a house on it or not, pays county, school, and town tax.
Yes, every single one of these lots is assessed as a building lot because it's a filed plat. Is that correct?
And now the roads are done.
I'm sorry?
And now the roads are done.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, and the ro-
so they're currently paying their
Yes,
fair share.
taxes are
They're paying their
paid.
current fair share, and once you go from a lot that's worth 150, 200, whatever the dollar value, when it becomes $1 million home, their tax will increase accordingly. So they are
Correct.
currently paying a fair share toward the maintenance of the roads, even though they're not even being used.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I do have one. Will the applicant pay any additional legal fees incurred with the road dedication?
Well, what?
Pay additional fees for.
Legal
road-
fees.
For what?
For the town?
Yes,
That
I
we
don't-
have to-
I don't think there'll be any legal fees.
Okay.
They had to make a
We
document.
prepare the documents, we prepare the as-built survey, we submit it to the town attorney and to the town consulting engineer who has input on this. There may be some time spent by the town consulting engineer, there might be some
But we
time.
already got fees for that, it's already been paid. This is a project that's fully paid for, and we have the fees.
No, these would be additional, in addition.
No, it wouldn't be additional.
Okay.
We're gonna dedicate a road, it's now or in the future.
And I
believe-
think
I
that the town
believe-
attorney is,
He wants us,
I don't think he's gonna get any extra fees for this because we give you a salary, so we don't have to worry about that. I think the town engineer, because otherwise they might charge, but how much would it be? I mean, I've never sat here where I thought the town engineer is charging for that which, applicants pay.
When the project was completed, the applicant paid inspection fees. And
There
that-
was a percentage of estimated construction cost, and Southeast is high, relatively high in comparison to other municipalities. There is a percentage of the estimated construction fees, as I recall, that are paid upfront by the applicant.
So that
they were.
should more than cover whatever.
Yes, it
additional-
does. Yes, it does.
Which is something that our engineers would be doing anyway, as the project would come online. I have one question. What is it that you would do or propose to do to indicate that once you go beyond point B, it's no longer a town highway?
Which
Because
is
we are
point-
not going to maintain
What's
the
point
rest of
B?
the roads.
Which is point B?
Well, I mean,
Lois?
you see where it goes up and it turns into that cul-de-sac?
Yeah.
okay,
That's where it's no longer green?
Right.
That whole road network, somebody's gonna drive up there thinking that this is a town road, and. guess
okay,
what?
Rick, I'll try to help maybe. A town road is indicated by a green sign, white lettering, and vice versa. If it's a private, which will be private, you would post white signs with green lettering.
If I may, if you were to drive up there tomorrow morning, nobody raised that question. You will see that there's white fencing right here, okay? And the reason for the white fencing, and there's also, on the other side, there's a gated fence which is now open because of the construction of the barn. But essentially these areas are closed off. We can make sure they're closed off. I mean.
Well, that's.
Yeah, but there's no
that's the point.
homes up
Would be
there.
a condition of.
There's no
whatever
homes.
this town board does, but obviously for emergency purposes, there's got to be, it's got to be a breakaway gate or something like that. Because,
That's
God
fine.
forbid there's a fire back there and you've got to get fire trucks back there.
Yeah, well, there's no construction back here at all.
I know, but there's,
But there is the water tank and the.
Yeah, the water tank's
building,
over here.
So there could be some reason to get through.
Okay,
It sounds like a simple solution.
okay, Rick, here's my recommendation, and town attorney can correct me. What I believe you should do is you have been in contact with the highway superintendent and the town engineer and yourself. Identify what you'd like to prepare for a document for this town board to review, and at some point in time, as soon as practical, get it in front of us to say yea or nay, and you'll know where you're going.
May I ask a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. When we allow or dedicate these roads for the town, and if we ask a top course to be put on, before we would dedicate the remaining roads, would the applicant maintain or bring the road that's already been dedicated to the town up to the same standards as the rest of the network? And would the applicant be willing to pay those costs? Because once you dedicate the road to us, isn't it our responsibility?
The answer to that is this. If in fact what is required is to put the top course on this, in my conversation with Mr. Fenton today, what he said was that there would be adequate security if 2, 3, 4 years from now, when this is being built out and there's an offer of dedication being made, that if there were some remedial repairs that had to be made here, it would be made.
Good, that's what I needed.
And you'd write that in your document?
That would be part of the agreement.
Okay.
And one other question. Once the town accepts the dedication of the roads to us, has Brewster Central School District indicated that they would pick up the students up in there?
I don't know how they can refuse.
Right.
Okay, I don't know either, but I'm just wondering how they could have refused up till now if they do it for Salmon Daily Brook.
It's not that unusual.
It-
Well, see, Salmon's Daily Brook was a rather unique situation. And the reason was because from the get-go, those were private roads.
Okay.
And that's why there was a lot of controversy, because on the plat and the offering plan and everything else, it was these roads will never be dedicated. These will be private roads, and that was it. This is different. It's like your other subdivisions for the most part.
my point was that Brewster Central School District does go into Salmon's Daily.
Yeah.
But it would
But
not,
they didn't
they had
until the final course was put on that road.
Yeah, but as a member of Simon's, you always had to worry, one of these days, they pull the plug, and guess what? You really get nothing. There's no dollar for you, there's no bang for your buck in Simon's. So what happened is, since then, Simon's has done a wonderful job of the road. I mean, the road is really a wonderful road, but it's still not built to town specs, because we couldn't build it to town specs, not only the road, but the cul-de-sacs. So the fact that the buses come in is a wonderful thing, but it's aberrational. And I'll tell you right now, if Salmons came in today, from what I'm hearing from this board, there would never be a chance that there would be a bus or a post office or anybody coming in there because of what I'm hearing here. Even though the people in Salmons, including me, you pay phenomenal taxes. So what you got out of the whole thing was really nothing. So the buses come in, God bless, the kids are happy, the residents are happy, they pay mega bucks for where they are, and for the school, and for the state, county, and town, but,
Liz, I understand what your
Good.
position is, but I think you're missing my point.
Oh.
There's nothing to say that the Brewster School District.
no, no,
When
no, actually,
the road's not done.
and actually, you're missing my point, which is right now, you're hearing how this town, if the people Salmons came in right now, we wouldn't have that. They would say, no, too bad, you're not gonna have the snow plows in here, period. And then the school might say, well, you're not gonna have the school buses, period. So you can't tell me that right now, that the school buses would ever go into that subdivision that little green line, nor any snowplows go into that little green line because of the fact that the roads aren't dedicated.
Well-
Salmon's was a unique situation.
May I just make one point? May I make one-
I'm saying that these, if we took these as dedicated roads, if they're not done, the Brewster School District is gonna make their own determination as to whether they go in there or not.
I don't know
Yes, and
about that.
and I would say that Maple Road, where I am, would never allow school buses, large school buses down the road until Crosby Hill went in. And then, despite there being no improvements on the road, large buses now travel Maple Road. So things can change. You can get the buses to go on roads they previously didn't go on. I don't know how it works, but I know it can work.
Okay,
Well, those roads were dedicated.
Yes, but they wouldn't before, but.
No, but my point is, those roads were dedicated. You said the buses now go in there, whereas they would never before. Maple Road would not, you would not have the buses, but they will now that that road was dedicated.
No, Maple
My
was
only-
always dedicated. Maple was always-
No, forgive me. It was the quality of the road that you're talking about that stopped the buses from doing it. My point is that once Enoch Crosby roads were built to town specs,
It wasn't. The Crosby Hill was, but Enoch Crosby Road, getting there was never built to town specs and still is not. And Maple, which they have to go down, was never built to town specs. They're both roads are dedicated, and the buses finally decided when there were 50 houses built, 49 houses and change, that then they would go down there. So my point is, and I agree with Will on this, is there's no guarantee with the school buses. It seems a little bit arbitrary to me what they decide to do.
but let me ask you a question. I guess my point is this. That subdivision that was built, and then the school buses went up there, that subdivision in there, aren't those roads built to town specs?
Those roads, but you
Yes,
can't
and
get there
weren't
on
those
town
roads
roads.
dedicated? Yes, okay.
But they can't get there without, they couldn't get there without.
Here's my point. Bottom line, quite frankly, you got $6.7 million. Why do you want to, and you have people that have bought $1 million homes, and you have the security to cover the road if there's a problem, why wouldn't you help?
okay, look, let me make two quick comments. One, let's address the school and ask the question, okay?
Fine.
And find out if they do that, because if they don't, then this is a moot point. So let's get them to identify what we would like to do or consider doing, would they do it? If they say no, it doesn't happen. If they say yes, we consider it. How's that?
Well, consider what? I don't get it, but
Oh,
also.
wait, no, time out. I'm hearing this is for the people to get the kids up with the school bus. But the school says there's only 15 homes or 20 homes. We're not doing it. When you got 50 homes, we're gonna do it.
But if the
I
road is
will-
dedicated, I mean,
Do they get mail now?
We don't know they're
I
doing it.
will ask the question. I don't know, with the school board staffing circumstances and everything else that are going on, I'm not quite sure what, whether they're.
What would be the, okay, so,
I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to find out. I'll
Yeah.
find out. I'll
but if they
try.
put the top course on and.
And the road is dedicated,
And the
why would
road
they
is
not?
dedicated, then what's the deal?
No,
Because
that's-
otherwise, then you have to worry about the snowplows.
But, no, that's just, the question was really,
No, he said that if
will they
you
do
propose
that?
it, he'll
I mean,
do it. That's what I
I think it's a
heard.
great idea, to dedicate the road, that's cool. And-
That's
And
exactly
you guys
right.
are going to agree
So
to
if we-
maintain it, and bring it back up to spec when the other section's done?
Right.
Cool, that's great.
ask the
That's what-
question.
I
And
just
$6
wondered
million.
if Brewster
And you got
Central School
people, I
District
wanna pay taxes
is
for
committed to
nothing?
doing it, I'm
Jesus
just
Christ, really?
wondering, but good,
What is this
let's,
about?
let's
I'm just
make it
wondering.
happen.
what-
We're going to find out.
And one other quick thing, if I could. I moved here in 1957,
Wait a
lived in
minute,
Brewster
they're saying
Heights.
they're gonna dedicate it,
Okay?
$6 million.
The roads were not dedicated for about a year after we moved in. We had to walk to the bottom of the hill. Cars couldn't get up the hill because the town wouldn't plow them because they weren't dedicated. So what you're doing now is no different than they did back 60-plus years ago.
And that explains why you're so thin.
Rick, can I just ask you one last question? If there was a requirement that the top course for the green area had to be added, okay, or had to be completed, would that be something that would be agreeable?
They're doing it.
That's what he
Yes.
said.
No, I want to make sure I'm having a sidebar.
My-
said that.
Yes.
I understand. I'm having a sidebar.
My understanding from speaking with the company was if that is what it takes, they're willing to do that.
Fine,
I
there
am
you
going
go.
to go back and make sure that there is not a problem with that, okay? And think about it. If you have that and you still have the $6.7 million, what are you worried about?
One last thing, because I have no problem recusing myself on this vote, but I would like to point out that we worked well when I was on the ARB, on the stables and other parts of this property. So I have no problem recusing myself, but I would like to point that out.
That's fine.
Okay, you're going to send a letter, you CC the town, whatever you ask the school?
We're going to do everything we can to move this along.
Contact town engineer, town
I
highway
want-
superintendent?
We want to have harmonic convergence here. We want to sell million-dollar homes, believe me, we do.
Okay,
Harmonic versions?
Harmonic
Oh, okay,
convergence.
very good, very good. Thank you.
thank you.
That's sort of like kumbaya.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Came to mind as you were
Thank
saying
you.
that.
Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion on road name for Terravis Senior Housing. Discussion. Ms. Eckhart, why don't you go first?
I would like to thank Lori Bell and the applicant, because I was not crazy about the first names, which sounds very petty, but we lived with these names for a long time. They didn't really, except for Magnolia, they didn't really convey a sense of place. And Lori was terrific and went back to the applicant, and so we have changed the names to Elderberry, Redbud, Magnolia would stay, and Aspen. And I'm grateful for your work on
Are
that.
they all roads, lanes, where they, how are they
No.
going to?
Well, I haven't even figured that out yet. First, we were trying to come up with 4 names.
Okay,
But we have an Aspen Court in town, and there's an Aspen Lane elsewhere in the county, so Aspen's off the table.
Okay.
good.
So I heard some rumblings that nobody really cared for sassafras, no offense.
No, that's none
So
taken.
I went through the county database. I was trying to stay with the theme that we had sort of established, and I was coming up with an alternative for discussion. And just so that you guys know, there were originally 19 road names provided by the developer as options for us to consider, some of which I had to rule out because they were already in the town, or others were already in the county. And the whole idea of working with emergency services is to make sure that there's little, if any, duplication of road names throughout the county, so it doesn't matter who's responding from where. So the suggestion to substitute for Aspen that I have is crabapple. It's flowering, it's local.
It's great.
Right? It's not too difficult for small children to figure out how to spell or pronounce. So that would leave us with crabapple, elderberry, redbud, and magnolia.
Great.
And I figured if tonight was just discussion, we could just throw that out there, and then if otherwise sounded okay, then in 2 weeks I could ask Will to drop a resolution. I'll figure out which is going to be which.
I would suggest that.
What we tried to do was use native plants, native trees, so anyhow.
And flowering trees.
And flowering,
They're a
possibly.
lot better than the originals, I have no problem with it.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else does.
Anybody else?
Edwin?
Good?
John?
Who
Go
cares, right?
for it.
Okay,
Yeah, it's been a lot of work.
prepare them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Lori.
Next, item 5 is discussion T21 legislation. That means it's age 21 to purchase tobacco products. Do we have any smokers that want to go first? Okay, non-smokers.
Well, there are lots of non-smokers on the board then. I've been attending county meetings on raising the age countywide, and I think it would be helpful if the town could write a letter of support or pass a resolution that we would like to support the county in raising the age of tobacco purchase to 21. I have 5 quick facts that 96% of smokers begin smoking before the age of 21. Most young smokers get their cigarettes from their peers, 18 to 21, because they're allowed to buy them. And there are a greater number now of 18 and 19-year-olds attending high school. Few 21-year-olds travel in high school circles. Delayed smoking initiation reduces the likelihood of ever starting. It reduces the number of regular smokers and lessens the immediate and mid to long-term health effects of smoking. And 5, a prevention needs, I just found this out, a prevention needs assessment survey was done this May, and it indicated that that Putnam students were twice as likely as the national average to have tried vaping in the last 30 days. So this would really help address the problem we're having with vaping in this county. It's important this would not be proposing a new regulation, but replacing an existing regulation. And of course, there are great healthcare costs associated with tobacco-related illnesses. And raising the age can help with future addictions. So I wanted to discuss this, see what people think, and if we could do a letter of support or whatever, if the board feels it's appropriate, and pass this on to the county.
Okay. I sold cigarettes at my store at one point in time when I was there. I agree with everything you say, but I still have a problem with what goes on. The federal government, state governments know how hazardous smoking is to your health. I don't care what age you are. You just mentioned how much health costs are. So why don't someone finally come up and say, and admit this is a nicotine is an addiction by the public, and that the sale of cigarettes should be done, I believe, in drugstores, behind the counter, with a prescription from a doctor. Then everyone that buys them has a responsibility. So if it says that, I would support it. And one of the things I don't like about this, which is not in the legislation, is when a person comes into a store and buys beer or liquor, it's a controlled by age limitation, okay? If I'm there and I sell it, I'm responsible. I have no problem with that. If my help sells it and I'm not there, they're responsible. With tobacco legislation, it's reverse. The store owner is always responsible. I never got picked off for selling cigarettes. I think the stings they've been doing, I haven't heard many lately, probably in the past year. People do get caught selling, but I don't like the fact that store owners are responsible. You train your employees, we take, sexual harassment courses here in this type of a business, not maybe in a regular business. So why is a store owner held responsible for an employee who misfires and does something wrong? So with that, I think the federal government, state government should say, like I just said, it's a controlled substance, admit finally there's something wrong, and I think we would get a lot more bang for our buck than what this offers.
Okay.
You know, I'm one of these people who, I never smoke cigarettes, never. The bottom line is, obviously, it's been recognized as a health hazard. There are many laws out there which have now prohibited people from smoking cigarettes in restaurants and bars and stores and hospitals and libraries, etc. I always had a question in my mind, and believe me, I've had family members stricken down with cancer, so I don't say this lightly. But part of whenever I see legislation or resolutions, etc., regarding cigarette smoking and saying, well, let's resolve that when at a certain age, cigarette smoking or smoking cigarettes will be banned, I always worry a little about the fact that it might be another incursion on our rights in terms of our liberties regarding what can we do when we're 18. So what can happen when someone is 18? Well, in the old days, and maybe in future days, you could be drafted. In our days, you can vote. In our days, you're required to be an adult. That being said, what I'm looking at here is saying, resolved, I recognize that preventing tobacco use by those under 25 must be a priority for our community. I don't know what's 25. Why isn't it 55? Why isn't it something that incorporates the fact that everyone knows that it's a health risk? Well, maybe because when people get older, they're considered to be more adult. I don't know where 96% of smokers begin smoking before age 21. I don't know where that particular statistic came from.
I sent out, Liz, just so you know, that when this was sent to everyone on the board, it had footnotes on the following page.
Yeah, but I don't know whether, do I trust what that footnote is? Do I trust the polls that say, this is the Rasmussen poll, this is the XYZ poll, this is whatever it is? The bottom line is, you have to examine the fact that, 18 years old, you're an adult, or at least that's what the law of the state of New York is. 21, well, of course, yeah, you can't buy alcohol between the age of 18 and 21. However, what are we doing in terms of saying, are we really becoming that kind of a nanny state? Do I think that people under the age of 21 should smoke? No. Do I think that the people under the age of 35 should smoke? No. That's my personal preference. But I wonder whether or not that is something that a government, or at least a town board, is going to do. Would I say that I would agree that preventing tobacco use by anyone is something that's a good idea and it's a priority for our community? Absolutely. But I'm not so certain whether that is something that I would say should be a mandate that our town board entertains. But yes, would I say it's preventing tobacco use is the most impactful public health strategy for our community, and am committed to increasing the health of our community through preventing tobacco use by youth and young adults? I'll add it, youth, young adults, and everybody else, because my family and I have been impacted by that. But that's what I look at when I see something like this.
John or Edwin?
Can I just say that the statistic that Liz asked about came from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and from the Surgeon General. So that was from that report. I don't think, it's like, would we want to go back to days of 18-year-olds drinking, even though they do, legally? Because I grew up, I'm old enough to remember that in New York State, and I think it's been proven that raising the age to 21 really has saved a lot of lives. And if that's, and by the way, this was only, I am not advocating for this exact resolution. It was an example of what can be done. What I'm advocating for is to raise the age, since it does appear to be factual that the younger kids start, the more apt they are to become lifelong smokers and addicted to nicotine. So, I mean, I am totally in favor of a letter of support. I don't think it has to be a resolution. I don't know whether you'd consider it a nanny state when the drinking age was raised to 21. I know a lot of people were really disappointed, but I think it's been a proven way to save lives. And I think deciding whether to smoke or deciding whether to drink being raised to 21 certainly it will not impact anyone adversely.
John or,
I don't know, but what I do know is it makes it awfully more interesting to go after it. And I think maybe what's happening too is if you want to start talking about smoking tobacco use, then you have to also look at all the other forms, the vaping and whatever have you. And then, of course, looking at New York State, which is now on the precipice of perhaps legitimizing marijuana use, recreational marijuana use. But here we are saying, that's okay, let's prevent tobacco use. I don't know, it's kind of a shifting priority. Do I think it's a good thing for anyone to be smoking tobacco? Absolutely not. But what right do I have to tell certain people not to, particularly in light of the fact that now New York is saying, oh no, it's going to be okay, and let's legitimize the use of marijuana recreationally. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but it seems to be, quite an oxymoronic kind of a selection. But, once again, do I say it? Yes. Do I think that, the government has to continue incursions into civil liberties? Probably no. Do I think that people need to educate our children? Do I think people need to educate each other about these hazards? Instead of having a government saying, no, you can't do that. Why don't we try harder to educate our youth about these kinds of problems instead of saying, no, you can't, and then making it more attractive? That's what I think.
okay, John or Edwin?
I was, like I said, this is a healthy debate here. I thought it would be simple, yeah, sure, I'm in favor. No, I'm not in favor. I mean, I'm in support of it. I don't think, quite honestly, I think, will it minimize things? Will it stop maybe one person, two people? Sure. I think where there's a will, there's a way. I know today's youth, if they want to drink, they want to smoke, they're going to find a loophole one way or another to do it. But on face value, I definitely would support at least a letter. I'm not saying a resolution. If we get into Liz's argument, she brings up a good point. When I was in the Army and I was 18, I could go join the Army, serve my country, but I couldn't go out not that I smoke, but I couldn't go out and buy a pack of cigarettes, or I couldn't go buy a beer. But I don't want to get into it in that type of philosophical debate and whatnot, but at least for right now, definitely a letter of support. I think if it minimizes or stops one kid, then we've already won, you know.
John?
I would support a letter of support to the county to pursue putting their own resolution together, not permitting tobacco sales to people under the age of 21.
Okay. Here's the compromise. The town will send a letter of support, and the 3 town board members that want to sign it will sign it on behalf of themselves and forward it to the county. I'll get it written and have it so you can all sign, and it'll go out as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay. Regular meeting. Make a motion to go into regular portion of the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution number 1, settlement of certiorari proceedings, Atlanticare, tax map number 46.46-5-9. And just in case all you wondering, I can't see well. I have cataracts, and I'm waiting for the operation, hopefully within a month's time, and I'll be able to see a lot better. So I'll continue to try to read and see what happens. Resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendations of professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent judgment, and/or order of consent in accordance with said recommendations for the following: petitioner, Atlanticare, tax ID 46.5-9, year 2017, assessment $2,604,000, settled assessment $18 million. Atlanticare 46.5-9, 2018, assessment $20,604,000, settled assessment $17,750. And be further resolved that the town.
17 million.
Mill.
What did I say?
750,000.
Well, I was close, I missed the comma. Okay. $17,750,000. And be further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute any and all stipulations, consent orders, or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2, resolution settlement of certiorari proceedings. Wow, how do you pronounce this?
Krasnicki,
Krasnicki. What nationality is that?
American.
Serbian, Slovakian.
Krasnicki Properties, tax map number 67.35-1-2. Resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendations of professional advisors and authorize the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent judgment, and/or order of consent in accordance with said recommendation for the following: petitioner,
Krasnicki Properties.
tax ID 67.35-1-2, year 2017, assessment $330,600, settled assessment $275,000. And be further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute any and all stipulations, consent orders, or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution settlement of certiorari proceedings, Middle Branch Realty, tax map number 55.12-1-9. Now therefore be resolved, the town board of the town of Southeast does hereby accept recommendations of professional advisors and authorizes the town attorney to execute stipulations of settlement, consent judgment, and/or order of consent in accordance with recommendations for the following: petitioner, Middle Branch Realty, tax ID 55.12-1-9, year 2017, assessment $2,040,000, settled assessment $1,950,000. Middle Branch Realty, 55.12-1-9, 2018, assessment $2,040,000, settled assessment $2 million. And be further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute any and all stipulations, consent orders, or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a resolution miscellaneous diesel fuel and miscellaneous gas distribution, tracking, replacing, and superseding resolutions 37 and 42 of 2018. We had this here last month. Unfortunately, I left off 2 important lines, a typo, I think, with the word transaction list, and I can't see what it changed. Okay. Here's the line that was added. Any gas or diesel pumped with a personal identification, social security number, similarly identified in number 1 above, shall be required the same reporting requirements. However, if no, and the others remain the same. However, if no miscellaneous fuel key or personal identification, social security number, fuel key dispenser key during the month as identified in 1 above, no such report shall be necessary for the month. Now, one thing I also changed, we had the requirement of it as being anything under 5, I made it 5 gallons. The first report came, I think there was 5 distributions identified, of which only 1 was above 5 gallons. So I changed that to 5 gallons. Kind of worked a bit, so that was the first round. We'll go to the second round on the new one. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion.
I just wanted to point out that where you were reading was number 2
Yes?
of the resolution, and it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think it was 6 or 7 lines down in that paragraph. So you modified that paragraph too, correct?
Yes, 8.
Okay.
That was the one. That was the one we actually. And there's a couple other minor things in the gallonage. We made 5 gallons and 5+ gallons. Those are the changes. And next time I'm gonna highlight it in yellow. It was yellow, I can't see the gray in there.
Right. Well, I picked it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, good enough. Discussion?
Do we have to read the whole resolution again, or can we only
No.
say that it's amended?
As amended.
You don't have to read
Pardon me?
it. You don't have to read it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, recognition of public. Oh, by the way, there are attachments to that as well, which will all be forwarded to the Highway Department tomorrow.
But the attachments were the same attachments we
Same
had before.
attachment, yeah, they did not change. Same numbers. Except the other ones were R6, and it's only 4 items on the agenda, so it's an R4.
Good.
Public? Board? Oh, we know trouble when we see it, trust me.
Kathy McBride, Brewster Heights, and I was just wondering, I know Terry was here a couple of months back about 150 Putnam Avenue, the house at the bottom of the hill. They're renting rooms. There's like 15, 20 cars down there at
Okay.
night.
The
a big
very
house.
one, the very big house at the
Yeah,
bottom
the
of the
big
house.
house.
Okay?
Did anyone look into that? The
Oh, we
Plume
did.
House. They also had a house up on the hill. They had a sign out for rent, and now people living in there too.
I checked with it the very next day, and I could have sworn I got back to people and made them aware of it.
No, well, what's the deal?
Okay, the deal is, they're legal. They have all their necessary
That's
permits.
septic land.
Pardon?
It's septic land.
And it has to be approved by the health department. Our regulations,
Yeah, so what do we call the health department then?
if there's something bad with the septic.
I'm saying that you only have so much acres. How
But
could
you
you have
understand-
20 cars down there?
Well, because they could be visiting. I mean, personally, I got 5 cars. What does that mean?
I don't know what it means. I'm just saying that, forget it.
They meet all the requirements.
It's legal. So is everything else legal.
Anyone else? Okay, back to the board.
I was just going to say, I was at Community Day on Sunday. God, it was just as hot as it was on the 4th of July. But I just wanted to thank the Recreation Department. They did a great job, as always. You know, I was there for about 2 hours, had a great time. So I just wanted to throw out a shout out to the Recreation Department for a job well done.
Anyone else? Any comment about that?
Well, I was going to say, once again, the 9/11 requirements, please have those addresses out there to ensure that if, God forbid, there's an emergency at your premises or at your neighbor's premises, that our emergency services can be there as efficiently and as quickly as possible to help the community.
And one brief thing quickly, garbage. You've been hearing a lot about that possibly in the news lately, about recyclables going to China. China's refusing them. They're sending them back to the United States. We met with our current contractor. It's going to be quite expensive. I'm not sure how it's going to hit us this year, but I think we heard a figure, Lynn and I attended a meeting, was like $500,000 or something. It's expensive. They're trying to work on alternatives. Your report next year, when you get your garbage flyer in the mail, you're going to have to read it carefully. A lot of people were upset this year that you can't put out your recyclables in bags anymore. Their purpose in that was the fact that they clogged the machines that were sorting them. Now there's an even bigger problem. You can't get rid of a lot of things. If you have a pizza box, as long as your pizza doesn't touch the top and there's no grease on it, it's kind of like ridiculous. We're going to make it as simplified as possible when we send them out. We're going to give you plenty of warning, and come January 1st, if your garbage is, your recycling is left behind, be sure you read our flyer. Now we're going to have them come in November and December to give a brief presentation on the screen, so the public is made aware of what the new regulations will be. And it's not anything that we're doing, nothing that they're doing. It does cost them more money, which means it's going to cost us more money. They're limited by their contract. I think it was a 5-year contract we signed, that it can't increase more than 3% in 1 year. But at some point in time, if it keeps going the way it's going, it's going to be substantial at the end of the contract. But beginning November, December, we'll have 2 public meetings on it, making the people aware of it. And please pay attention, because they will not be picking up recyclables if you don't adhere to the code.
Gonna have to make those pizza boxes a bit higher, right?
Oh, it's not just pizza boxes, it's crazy, crazy stuff. But we're only going to, if you don't see it on the list, you can't put it in there. That's how simplified we're going to try to make it.
Yeah, and we'll have to alternate weeks. It appears on paper pickup and the glass, metal, and plastic pickup. So, but we will have a presentation that I think will be 2 of them that'll be very helpful, and 2 flyers will be going out. One at the contractor's expense.
And I'm going to tell you now, you're going to need a scorecard by your refrigerator to tell what goes or where your garbage cans are, but it's beyond our control. And if China decides to take the recyclables, maybe they'll go back to what it was. But right now, the game plan is to notify the public, give them plenty of notice. Last year, we got quite a bit of kickback on what happened, but it's beyond our control. It's what the industry calls for and what happens. I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I attended a Village of Brewster meeting this past week, or I guess last week, where Envision Brewster gave another presentation of what they're planning to do in their redevelopment of the village. And again, they plan to start at the east side of the village, at Borden Bridge, and come west, where we used to have a farmer's market. The Sun Homes, the company that is working with the developer with ideas and visions, plans to put, I think, 15 townhomes, probably overlooking the Croton River there. And that's, I think, where they're going to be trying to start, and I think generate some enthusiasm for their vision for the village. So it was informative, but they didn't give a lot of explanation of where they were planning to go. I think they're just trying to generate some enthusiasm for the village trustees' vision of how they think the village should look and go forward. So I suggest that if anyone is interested in this, they check out the village website and plan to attend any of these other presentations that the village may make in the future.
And then I think what else was interesting is that it's going to take a little longer than they expected because of, I think, DEP, working with the DEP. So, yeah. But it was interesting, and I would go on their website if you have questions.
Okay, anyone else? Entertain the motion.
Make a motion, we close tonight's meeting.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.